Today, we'll talk about inducement and liquidity and how it affects price movements. Then we will work on trading examples, most of the trades that I took last week. This will be a crazy trading video for day traders and scalpers. You'll learn about liquidity hunts, inducement reactions, supply and demand trading, and order blocks. We have so much to do. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading, check out my free course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. And please try to watch videos in order, otherwise it can confuse you. Before we start, what is really an inducement? It is an extremely simple concept. Basically, inducement is the liquidity hunt at significant key structures. So, a hunt after every swing low or high is not an inducement. But if it is extremely close to a key structure, such as important order block, breaker block, large imbalance, or optimal entry zone, then it's called inducement. Do not worry, we will see a lot of examples now. Let's check out the last week's important New York opening scalps. This is the 30-minute time frame, right before the opening. Notice the very strong break on the left and the order block that it created. Of course, we cannot skip this magnificent imbalance, which is the core of all our trades. For extra confidence, you can also use the optimal trade entry. Okay, notice the swing low, which is extremely important. This is not a usual swing low. This swing low has a lot of meaning. Why? It is inside the imbalance. It is colliding with order block. It is in the OTE zone. So the sweep of this low, or call it liquidity hunt, is the IDM, basically the inducement. This is how we pinpoint inducement liquidity. Very simple, very clear. Beside all this, notice the gathering liquidity on top, forming a nice target for us. Okay, now zoomed in on the 1 minute chart and waiting for a proper trading opportunity. The first thing is first, a target. As you know, the rule is no target, no trade. This equal highs is a great target. I would have preferred an equal and imbalance combo, but there are some imbalances along the way which may pull the price. Notice the structure break, which has powerful green candlesticks with large bodies. This is what I really like. See this nice imbalance and the order block right beside it. This is the location where I made my entry. Now you may ask, why is my stop loss right here around this deep order block? Remember what I always say, your entry, target, and stop loss will change from chart to chart. They are not fixed. Check my target, equal highs. In order to achieve my prime ratio, which is 1R to 2R, I have to place my stop loss at this point. If I put it to deep swing low, it will be a 1R to 1R ratio trade, which is meaningless for me. Let's see the chart within 15 minutes. Look at this tiny trade that I took, very tiny looking. But see the power of inducement. That inducement and 1 minute entry caused insane price movement. It could have been a 50R trade in a sense. Of course, it did not happen. Yet again, I wanted to show you the power of inducement. Let's look at more inducement examples with the opening scalps. Notice this lovely 5-minute imbalance and the order block right next to it. Notice the equal lows, not perfect equal lows, but it is considerable. Now, this is inducement because it is right next to the imbalance and order block. Check this swing point, which creates the deep swing low. This is our true market structure line. You can also use your premium and discount tool to check the dealing range of price, if it is getting cheaper or more expensive. Let's take a close look at the New York opening and 1-minute chart. If you observe the chart with your trading view, you'll notice there's a fresh imbalance in the chart. I want you to notice this market structure break in 1 minute and this deep imbalance area. Right next to it is the order block. If you use your optimal trade entry tool, you can see how perfectly the price touches the OTE zone. Right after that, notice what happens. Our third market structure break. So basically, 3 times market structure break inside one after another. See the break here. 3 huge candlesticks with powerful displacement and extremely large imbalance. At the top, you can see possible targets of liquidity. Right below the 1-minute imbalance, this gives me a proper target to aim for. There are 2 things that really affect my trading. First, unclear targets. If I cannot find clear targets, it is bad. Second, early entries. If I do not watch the price for really good entry and rush things, it is terrible for me. This is how I took this trade. Lots of patience and pain. Now let's see. This week created the external inducement hunt, and this week created internal inducement hunt. I hope the inducement is now very clear. It is a really simple method. Now, this trade is actually not something I am really proud of, because it is mostly based on in 1-minute chart without proper high time frame analysis. Again, it was a New York Open scalping. This trade is fully based on a very basic inducement pattern. See this shape? A very classic smart money trading model. Price dropping and leaving behind a significant equal highs and a significant imbalance to induce the price. A very basic, very straightforward method that I was trading back in the day without multiple time frame analysis. First of all, notice these lovely relative equal lows below, which may serve you as a target. I trained my eyes to find targets. This is mostly what I do first, because without a goal, there is no progress. Notice this considerable swing failure pattern right here, which actually hunts this internal liquidity. Then the price strongly breaks downward. Okay, check this perfect equal highs, which is combined with tiny imbalances right above it with different time frames if you check. For extra confidence, use your optimal trade entry. Beside all this, swing failure pattern noticeable here. Okay, altogether, what do we have right here? Failed imbalance, hunted equal highs, fully failed optimal trade entry, and the swing failure pattern. 4 patterns together created an extremely powerful inducement zone for the price reaction. This is how I took this trade. However, I strongly suggest you combine multiple time frames for your trading. What I did here was a risky game. Okay folks, with this video, we have learned a lot about inducement and liquidity, useful trading methods. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life while you are scalping, day trading, or even swing trading. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.